Video games often contain a lot of violence. That's just how it is. But some take it to a whole other level. And today we're going to dive into 15 of the most violent video games ever. Number 15 is MadWorld, a Wii-exclusive action game that resembles an anime version of Sin City, with matching violence. The game is black and white, except for the red blood splattered everywhere. Your character, armed with a chainsaw, executes brutal kills like impaling and tearing enemies apart. The absurd violence feels almost comical, like Manhunt, but not as serious. It's an over-the-top action game packed with outrageous violence. At number 14 is Fallout 3. It's easy to forget how shockingly violent this game, in New Vegas, can be. Fights often end with limbs lost, eyeballs flying, or brain matter splattering. The VAT system enhances the gore, displaying every gruesome detail in slow motion. While the violence could be horrifying, it fits seamlessly into the Fallout experience, with Fallout 3 bringing that brutality into 3D effectively. And number 13 is Ninja Gaiden 2. While later versions toned down the gore, the original Xbox 360 release was extremely violent. Every attack sprays blood, and limbs are chopped off constantly. Even after losing arms or legs, enemies still launch kamikaze attacks. By the end of each fight, you're surrounded by blood and body parts, with the sheer carnage feeling overwhelming. Despite fighting evil ninjas, you might feel some pity for them, especially after a powerful combo leaves nothing but a torso. At number 12 is The Punisher, where the real violence comes from brutal interrogations rather than shooting. You extract information by threatening enemies with tools and environmental hazards, but as the Punisher, it always ends in a gruesome kill. Although not extreme by today's standards, it was heavily censored at the time. Filters and jerky camera angles obscure the action, ironically making it feel more gory than it actually is. The censorship only emphasizes the brutality it tries to hide. At number 11 is Turok 2. One of the most grotesquely violent games on Nintendo systems. The cerebral bore weapon, which drills into enemies' brains, sends blood and brain matter flying. Despite the low-polygon enemy models, it's still shockingly graphic, with unsettling sound effects adding to the impact. You can also blast off limbs and shoot holes in chests. Fighting monsters instead of humans made the violence more acceptable for ratings boards, proving that as long as enemies aren't human, anything goes. At number 10 is The Darkness 2. Despite its comic book style, the violence is even more graphic than in the first game. You'll rip enemies apart, impale them with rods, and slice them in half with car doors in a non-stop bloodbath. The serpents you control add to the brutality, featuring numerous heart-ripping animations. Whether targeting corpses or living foes, the game is filled with punctured chests and removed beating hearts. While the game itself may be forgettable, the over-the-top violence certainly leaves an impression. At number 9 is Shadow of Rome, a hidden gem for the PlayStation 2 from Capcom and arguably the best gladiator combat game available. The combat resembles a precursor to Dead Rising, but instead of zombies, you're battling formidable gladiators with even worse violence. Blood sprays everywhere, limbs are severed, and the brutality is raw and exploitative, akin to MadWorld, but without the comedic tone. The nastiness is evident even without blood. For instance, breaking an enemy's arm leaves it flapping uselessly at their side. Although some parts are slower, the arena combat offers a unique experience. At number 8 is Dead Space 2. While the remake may be more technically violent, Dead Space 2 features some of the series' most disturbing moments, like the giant needle to the eye and the horrifying transformation of a man into a necromorph with his face exploding. Although the remake's violence is more realistic, Dead Space 2 is even more shocking. The game revolves around cutting off alien limbs, which mitigates some of the disgust since the monsters barely resemble their former human selves. However, the gruesome death animations showcase Isaac Clarke's many brutal fates, with the needle in the eye being particularly unforgettable. At number 7 is Hotline Miami. This game demonstrates that high-fidelity graphics aren't essential for extreme violence. The characters you kill are tiny sprites, barely more than pixels, but the brutality still feels shockingly real. Hotline Miami revels in swift, effective violence. You can die quickly, but kill just as fast, leaving behind different kinds of bloody messes depending on your weapon. It's difficult to pinpoint why the violence feels so gross despite the simple visuals, but the splashes of blood and brutal animations convey it well. After a fight, the sight of mangled bodies and blood-soaked walls underscores the game's violence, even if it's just red pixels. At number 6 is Manhunt, a legendary title in the realm of violent video games. Designed to provoke controversy, Rockstar's Manhunt is likely the closest thing to a murder simulator that worried senators discussed in the early 2000s. You play as a death row inmate forced to survive by killing hunters pursuing you, all while being filmed on CCTV. The game has a gritty, snuff film vibe, focusing on brutal executions. Using items like scissors, blunt objects, or plastic bags, the kills are violent and unforgettable. Holding the button longer results in more brutal kills, with level 3 executions resembling slasher films. While you can be the slasher, you're not invincible, adding risk to those violent kills. But let's be honest, that's exactly why you're playing. Starting at number 5 is the Resident Evil 2 remake. While the series has always been gory, this game takes it to another level. You can inflict extreme damage on zombies, shooting off limbs, blowing off chunks of their heads, and leaving them barely intact. Some cutscenes are especially brutal, like the one where a man's face is sliced in half and another with shredded entrails. Later entries in the series tone down the violence, but nothing matches the sheer brutality of this remake. At number 4 is Dead Island 2, which sets a high bar for amusingly gross violence. A standout feature is the flesh system, a procedural evisceration system for humanoids that's quite impressive. With blunt weapons, you can break bones and smash teeth, while blades slice through flesh and sever limbs into bloody ribbons. Things get even more disgusting when you add acid, melting chunks of zombie flesh and exposing their organs. It's some of the grossest content I've seen, but also a technical marvel. The violence feels personal, as if you're truly inflicting the damage. Without the zombies, Dead Island 2 could be one of the most revolting games ever. While it's still incredibly gross, the fact that they're undead makes a difference for both players and the ESRB. At number 3 is God of War 3, which elevates the series' violence to a new level of shock value. Higher resolution textures and detailed enemy models provide a clearer view of Kratos' bloody rampage. Moments that were once comedic, like stomping on a Cyclops' eye, now feel realistic and gruesome. The damage you inflict is particularly gross when Kratos battles the gods, especially during Helios' death scene, where you can see the skin tear as you rip his head off. It's pretty nasty, and what Kratos does to Hercules is also disturbing, surpassing even horror games in its intensity. At number 2 is The Last of Us Part 2, where one of Naughty Dog's main goals was to create unsettling violence, and they succeeded. The violence isn't over the top, but disturbingly realistic, resembling scenes from Saving Private Ryan. The attention to detail makes it stand out. For instance, throwing a bottle at someone's face results in cuts and glass, while hitting someone with a baseball bat sends teeth flying. Bodies are mangled in believable, horrifying ways, with blood pooling realistically or spraying onto ceilings. Surprisingly, it's not the infected that create this sense of violence. It's what you do to other people. The violence in The Last of Us Part 2 hits hard when it wants to. At number 1 is Mortal Kombat 11, where the series' violence shifts from funny to downright disgusting. Fatalities, a signature feature, have evolved from silly, exaggerated bone explosions to gruesome acts. The jump in fidelity means characters now resemble real people, complete with detailed facial expressions and lifelike bodies. Advanced gore tech enables some of the most shocking fatalities in the series, like Noob Saibot pulling out intestines and Baraka shredding faces. While a few comedic fatalities remain, the realistic violence and detailed models were too much for some fans. In fact, the fatalities in the newer Mortal Kombat 1 seem toned down. They're still gross, but not as extreme as those in Mortal Kombat 11. When even fans consider the violence excessive, it's time to dial it back a bit. That's all for today. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you liked the video, hit that like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to do so. We upload new videos daily, and the best way to catch them is by subscribing and enabling notifications. Thanks for watching.